Yeah, thank you so much for having Martus present today. My name is Joseph Pleggy, and I'll be presenting Martus to show you better budgeting, forecasting, and reporting. So to give you a little bit of a roadmap for what we're going to look at over the next few minutes, we have different sections of Martus. You'll see a dashboard area for some quick budget versus actual reporting. Our planner section is really the meat of Martus, where we're creating budgets and new forecasts. And then we'll also take a look at our personnel budgeting module. Now, one thing to keep in mind as we're moving through here is I'm going to be an admin user. And what that means is we have access to see and do everything. But of course, we know you might have users inside of Martus who don't need to see and do everything. So you're able to manage their permissions and restrictions on a user by user basis. As a quick example here, if someone like Ed is logging in, we don't want him seeing and doing everything. So we've restricted him from personnel budgeting and certain other features. And furthermore, on the dimensions, I have 3 dimensions configured here. We can have up to 8. And for Ed's purposes, we've restricted him to a specific location, a specific department or 2. Well, I guess 2 programs there. And then you could also restrict to other dimensions that would be configured also. So Ed's use of Martus, when he logs in, he'll have a reduced menu options over here, and of course, only be able to see and work with the data related to these areas. Now, coming back over here to our dashboard section, there's going to be some pre-built reports that you see listed here, quick budget versus actual reporting. And of course, you'll have your filters for your different dimensions on all of these reports as well. Now, keep in mind, if Ed was logging in, he would only see a couple of these programs he has access to. He wouldn't be able to filter for anything else like I can. So there'll be these quick pre-built reports to maneuver around and see budget versus actuals. I'm going to come over here to our income statement and just point out a few things here. While they are pre-built, excuse me, they're very flexible. You're going to see the option to modify rows and columns, and of course apply other filters for the different dimensions and scope. So right now I've got it in an account view, which is why we see accounts on the rows, and I have my columns set to current month and year to date. You'll notice I can do months, I can do quarterly, I could do year over year, or even put dimensions across columns and dimensions on rows as well. So as a quick example, I'll just modify the column again and say, let's look at departments on our columns. So here is year-to-date activity by account and then expanded by our departments. So that's where the flexibility comes in on these pre-built reports. You can modify those, and then it's a click of a button to see them in different views. Now, where you see blue in Martus, that's going to be drillable. So I could drill into transactions and see underlying transaction detail. So memos, descriptions, how that was coded as well. This is one of those pre-built reports in this list. Now, beyond the pre-built reports, we also understand there are occasions where you're probably going to need to have some reports in here that have more data, more calculations, referencing multiple years, things like that. We do have a custom report builder for that as well. And so with our custom report builder, give you an example here, you're able to build other graphs and charts, look at other or build some other reports as well that crosses years, that crosses budgets, and compares those, and even does calculations like I mentioned on our columns. So there's the pre-built reports, and then there's also the custom report builder. Now, as part of the updater here, there is a nightly sync where we bring in updates to the actuals that are coming into Martus, as well as any updates to the chart of accounts and dimensions. Moving on to our planner section. Again, this is the meat of Martus. I'm going to start us off in our planner summary. This is where we are building budgets. We get a consolidated view of the budget right now because there's no filters in place. You'll see location, department, and project have no filters. Now, behind the scenes of this lie what we call budget worksheets. Martus has a very collaborative environment, and that's facilitated through the use of these budget worksheets, as well as a user's permissions. So right now, this is showing us all the different budget worksheets, right, defined by those dimensions, where someone has budgeted some office supplies. And the idea here is, as users are working in these different worksheets based on the permissions they have, Martus will take everyone's work from all of these areas and consolidate that in real time into one overall budget. So that way you can see the effect of everyone's work coming together in real time and the effects on the bottom line of the budget. Now, to go into those worksheets a little bit deeper, and by the way, there are going to be some more pre-built reports here, budget analysis, where you can compare prior year budgets. You can compare annualized actuals or trailing 12-month actuals, different analysis like that. So there's a side-by-side comparison where you can compare multiple budgets or new forecasts side by side and see those differences. So lots of other neat pre-built reports on the budget side. All right, so let's talk more about those budget worksheets. So here I've got a listing of my worksheets that are defined by the unique combination of location and department. Of course, yours might be different depending upon how you're using dimensions. Before I go into one of these, notice the status. I have most of these are still open, but one has been submitted and it's waiting for approval. Now, as it goes through approval, whoever said is the approver, and that can be more than one person, you could also have levels of approvers, they're going to receive an email once it gets submitted. And then they can come into Martus, review the worksheet, and then approve it or deny it and leave any comments back to that user. So let's go into a worksheet and talk about how we actually create budgets here. So this is going to be the typical user experience. At the top of this budget worksheet, which is defined by this location and this department, I have this reference section here in blue. The idea with the reference section is to give users that point of reference to help them work on next year's budget, or maybe that's a reforecasted version of the current year, where they're making some new projections. Now, there's different types of reference data that you can see here. They can drill into the detail and see the underlying transactions. But to get us going, let me show you this. I'm going to do what we call initialize. And you'll see where I can take my current year actuals. In my demo environment, my current year is 2022. Or I could take a mixture of current year actuals and budget. So in this case, we're not through with the current year, let's say. Let's take budget for the last few months. I could apply an adjustment to that. If I leave it at 100%, you see here that I basically copied down my reference section down here to my next year's budget as a starting point. Now we'll talk salaries and personnel budgeting in just a minute. But before I move on, notice here you can also click into the lines, tab through and make some updates. A lot of users like this budget widget where you can put monthly amounts in and the notes for each month as well. Now, there's going to be some quick adjustment types for users to utilize. For instance, a weekly adjustment is a weekly spread. You'll see 5 weeks in January, 4 in February, and so forth. Or I could do bi-weekly, monthly, there's a monthly one, quarterly or annual. So if it's 10,000 for the year for this budget line, annualized $833 a month. So there's other options, adjustments by percentages and so forth. Take a burn rate, apply that to next year and different values like this, or we can even copy some amounts. For instance, I might want to look at the trailing 12 months and see what that seasonality looks like, and then apply an adjustment to it. So if I take 90% of the trailing 12, I'm decreasing expenses in this budget line by 10%. I can put my notes in here for whoever's going to review my work for approval purposes, let them know that we decreased by 10% based on the trailing 12 months. And I'll copy that note down, but you can do other notes, still do other adjustments. When I save that line, you'll see it gets updated. And then I can also see notes there. So that blue icon tells us their notes. Now there's other features we call special purpose worksheets where you want to itemize budget lines or create other calculations. You can do that as well. So moving on, and to wrap us up here, there is a multi-year forecasting option or what if scenario planning in this forecast module. But moving on to personnel budgeting, notice our personnel scenarios. You can have multiple scenarios here, and it is position-based. These positions could be tied to employees. They could be vacant positions, or you could even pool positions. Instead of listing out 7 counselors in my case, I could have 1 counselor position that represented, say, 7 FTEs. Now, on these positions, we have what we call pay types that define how employees are compensated. These are all part of the setup as you go through implementation. Notice here you can define the FTE, if there's any start or end dates for seasonal employees and things like that. Define where it needs to hit the budget with those dimensions. Now, when I click View Detail, we'll see a detail breakdown for this position. Of course, you can remove filters and see all kinds of detail on this, and then the total compensation for the year for this position here. When we get ready to post a scenario back to the budget, we'll come to this tab right here. After we've reviewed it, we like it, and we'll select the budget we want to post to and take that scenario from personnel and post it over to our planner budget. This is a quick high-level overview, I know, but we're happy to address any other questions you may have. So I'm going to end things there. Thank you once again for having us at Martus. Present a little bit, and I'll turn it back to our moderator now.